I did my presentation on oppositional defiant disorder. So this is a behavioral condition typically diagnosed in children and adolescents. It's characterized by patterns of irritable mood, argumentative behavior, anger, defiance towards others, and for authority figures. So children often struggle with rules, exhibit hostility with peers, and are aversive to adults. With the DSM-5 classification, the pattern of anger, irritable mood, argumentative, defiant behavior, or vindictiveness has to last at least 6 months, as evidenced by at least four of those symptoms down here from any of the following categories, and it has to be exhibited during interactions with at least one individual who is not a sibling. So for severity, mild. Symptoms are confined to only one setting, home, school, work, or with peers. Moderate would be in at least two settings, and severe would be present in at least three or more. Prevalence is that ODD is reported to affect 2 to 16% of children and adolescents in the general population. So for neurophysiological structures, the amygdala, prefrontal cortex, anterior cingulate cortex, hippocampus, basal ganglia, and temporal parietal junction are involved with ODD, meaning that if there's dysregulation, emotional reactivity, impulse control, decision-making, planning, um, emotional responses, behavior, and being able to take in others' perspectives would be affected. For neurophysiological pathways, cortical limbic structure has to do with the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. So if there's dysfunction for people with ODD, this contributes to emotional dysregulation and impulsive responses. For the cortical striatal thalamic circuit, the dysfunction would be impaired communication associated with impulsivity and difficulty following rules. And then lastly, the corticobasal ganglia circuit, it mediates goal-directed behavior. So dysfunction would be poor regulation manifesting as defiance and noncompliance. Neurotransmitters involved with ODD are dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. So for people that are stable in all of these, they're going to have a stable mood typically. And then if there's lower or heightened levels, it would affect one's alertness, focus, and overall well-being and contentment, which would also be seen in people with ODD. So neuroanatomical structures. For people with ODD, brain scans can show significantly increased activity in an area called the anterior cingulate gyrus, considered to be the brain's gear shift. So here you can see an ODD brain. And it's thought that when it's overactive, people tend to get stuck on one thought or single course of action. And they may be argumentative, refusing to budge, and have other behavioral issues. And then here, when it's healthy without ODD, people can shift from one thought or activity to the next. So, three main brain behavior relationship theories that I found. To keep it short in a matter of time, I'll go through just the main ideas. So, emotional dysregulation theory, the core idea is that ODD behaviors are rooted in difficulties with regulating emotions. So, children often exhibit heightened physiological arousal during conflict, and dysregulation of neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine is implicated in mood. Interventions would be emotional regulation strategies with CBT, mindfulness, and biofeedback techniques. Second, we got social information processing model. The idea is that ODD behaviors arise from deficits in interpreting and responding to social cues. So, children are likely to attribute a hostile intent to others, even unintentionally, and aggressive defiant behaviors often follow misinterpretation of what's going on. So, interventions can be social skills training, role playing, and problem solving feedback. Lastly, we got executive functioning deficits theory. The idea is that ODD behaviors are linked to impairments in executive functioning, leading to poor decision making, frustration tolerance, and noncompliance with rules. So, children often struggle with tasks requiring sustained attention or rule following, as well as shifting strategies when faced with new expectations. So, interventions can be structured routines, maybe a picture schedule, strengthening executive functioning, probably through behavioral strategies and reward systems. Then, for effects of ODD on functioning, It typically impacts a person's functioning by causing difficulties in relationships, academic performance, work life, overall social interactions as well. And then this is typically due to frequent arguing, defiance towards authority figures, anger outbursts, and tendency to blame others for certain things. So there is the potential for further issues as there's an increased risk of developing conduct disorder, substance abuse issues, and depression and anxiety for people with ODD. And then it's worth mentioning that attributing ODD and substance abuse issues has to do with people when their ODD is severe. For medication, there aren't really medications that formally are approved to treat ODD. However, there are some used for other conditions that do get prescribed. So there's stimulants, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, and antidepressants that do get prescribed. It can have to do with ADHD and ODD coexisting, aggression, helping with emotional dysregulation, and mood stabilizing overall. Some disadvantages would be side effects like any other medications, and also the potential over reliance for people with ODD and temporary effects, meaning that the medication just covers up what's going on and not directly addressing it like therapy or other interventions would be. The assessment I chose is the BASC Behavior Assessment System for Children. There's teacher, parent, and student rating scales for ranges of adolescence and child age. Narratives and scale classifications in the reports are based on T-scores, and the composites are externalizing problems, internalizing problems, school problems, behavioral symptoms index, and adaptive scales. It assesses a range of behaviors, and some strengths, I believe, are that it is multi-informant, meaning that there's multiple people giving you information and it's comprehensive. Limitations would be that it's not diagnostic, but not everything is, and that it requires professional interpretation and overall consideration of outside factors than just this assessment. So it doesn't directly say a student has ODD, but it does give diagnostic considerations and recommendations. And I believe it's a helpful first step when looking at a child. And it's something I think that is important to do as like a baseline in assessment. And I also like how it can flag for negative response distortion, meaning that if a teacher is potentially biased, not really liking the kid, it will flag if the responses aren't consistent because there's like a 126, so it can tell if it's varying and not giving clear enough responses. This is just an example of a BASC that I inputted into the system, and it came out with all of this about ODD, ADHD, and CD for the kid. That's just something that I wanted to share. I'm not going to read it all. So there's a lot of differences between OD and CD. So I'm just going to point out the main ones. So core features, ODD has to do with persistent defiance, argumentativeness, and irritability, and conduct disorder has to do with more violations of rights or of others and social norms. Behavior for ODD for CD is more intense as it includes aggression, property destruction, deceit, and theft. Conduct disorder is more severe in behavior as it often involves harm to others, animals, and it has to do with illegal acts and disregard for rules. So ODD would be less as it doesn't typically involve illegal acts or harm to others. And then the other main thing I want to talk about is how ODD, the duration must persist 6 months or more, and CD is 12 months or more. For parent support, some information that I found while researching is that the main thing is getting your child treatment and intervention. So this is helpful with parent-child relationships, and it's crucial to the health and happiness of the household as well as your child's relationship with other people. Some kids can grow out of ODD, but others will continue to have behavioral issues. And this can have to do with peer rejection and difficulty forming healthy relationships. So it's important for parents to know that intervention is helpful. I like this picture here because it just showed kind of different ideas on how to help a child when you're the parent of somebody with ODD. And it's also important to identify the triggers to minimize them when possible. And then this is just an information site I found that's like a blog with parents, and then just also giving a lot of different ideas and resources for parents. So this actually is the same or like link that I had before. Goalie is an app and a device that assists with transitions, emotional regulations, setting goals, managing hours, scheduling, and motivating kids. So the parents would get this app on their phone and they'd have to buy the tablet for their child. It is a little pricier, but it's possible to get insurance to cover it. So it's a distraction-free tablet, meaning that you can't access the internet or get other apps on it. It's for neurodivergent kids, and it also has video classes, so it can teach them how to do certain things. And there's also one-on-one parent coaching videos that I thought was cool. Um, so routines can be set in multiple forms. Like this, it can have a video or just a pop-up. Parents can pick the schedule, so at 8 p.m. if they want their kid to brush their teeth, this can pop up. They can earn points for following rules and redeem them on an app to get to play a game or externally if the parents do that. It is a daily skill system as the main product, but Goalie also does have another device that can be bought. That's an AAC device, so you see it here, which I thought it was just cool. Then the TED Talk that I found is how to meet your child's difficult behavior with compassion. The key part that I want to talk about comes from this time. Newbold is talking about her experience with her son, who is nonverbal and has ASD. And she talks about how she first met him with a lot of structure and discipline, and how it just really didn't help with his behavior. And then she found a support group where she learned that meeting her child with compassion and understanding, kind of figuring out what works for him, what his triggers are, just significantly improved her relationship with her son. And she also talks about the prison pipeline for people with learning disabilities, which I think is important for parents and professionals to recognize. And she talked about how when parents kind of are negative towards themselves and like talk down on themselves as a parent, that it's not helpful and that it's important to meet yourself with compassion as well as your child so you learn their triggers and their needs and like what I talked about before on the picture, just like sticking to routines, giving them praise, and staying calm is like one of the best things for one's child. So I thought that was good for something that parents could hear as well as professionals. So for a technological application, I chose a wearable stress tracker as it's been found that it can monitor physiological signals. So a kid could wear this and the parent can have it on their phone. So it provides real-time feedback on stress, heart rate, variability, respiration rate, and you can see like the time of day where something's increasing and kind of identify what's going on. And then these are my references and how it's reliable.